The automated credit card payment that had been processed on the 15th of every month for 12 consecutive years at the prestigious Manhattan Plaza Hotel finally failed on March 15, 2024, triggering a routine investigation by hotel manager Luis Ortega that would uncover one of New York City's most disturbing mysteries: the skeletal remains of Anita Sharma, a 29-year-old fashion designer from Delhi, lying peacefully in Suite 1247, where she had apparently died alone and undetected in 2012, while the world continued outside her locked door, believing she was simply an eccentric guest who valued absolute privacy above all else. The discovery that would shock law enforcement and hotel staff began as a mundane financial inquiry when the bank notified the Manhattan Plaza Hotel that insufficient funds were available to process the monthly payment of €4,500 that had been automatically charged to the same credit card account since April 2012, creating the first disruption in what had been considered a perfectly reliable arrangement with their most mysterious long-term guest. Luis Ortega had managed luxury hotels for 32 years and had encountered countless wealthy eccentrics who maintained permanent suites for privacy, business purposes, or simply as symbols of status and financial success, though he had always found it unusual that Suite 1247's occupant had never been seen by staff, never made service requests, and never responded to any attempts at communication beyond the monthly payments that had continued without interruption for over a decade. The hotel's luxury clientele often included celebrities, international business leaders, and individuals who required complete discretion and privacy for legitimate reasons, creating a culture of non-interference and professional blindness that had allowed Anita Sharma's situation to continue unquestioned as long as the payments remained current and no complaints or security concerns arose from neighboring guests or building management. The decision to investigate Suite 1247 was made reluctantly after repeated attempts to contact the registered guest through phone calls, emails, and written notices had produced no response, though hotel policy required verification of occupancy before initiating eviction procedures for non-payment, particularly for a suite that had generated over €500,000 in revenue during its 12-year occupancy period. Carla Mendez, the housekeeping supervisor, who had worked at the Manhattan Plaza Hotel for 15 years, had often wondered about the guest in Suite 1247, who had specifically requested that no housekeeping services be provided and no staff members enter the room under any circumstances, though such arrangements were not unprecedented among wealthy clients who traveled frequently or maintained multiple residences and valued complete privacy during their occasional visits. The master key that Luis Ortega used to enter Suite 1247 on March 16, 2024, opened the door to a scene that would haunt him for the rest of his career. A luxury suite that had been transformed into a tomb where time had stopped in 2012, with the skeletal remains of a young woman dressed in expensive clothing lying on the king-size bed, surrounded by personal belongings and evidence of a life that had ended in isolation and mystery. The immediate response to discovering Anita's remains included evacuation of nearby suites, notification of law enforcement and medical examiners, and the beginning of a complex investigation that would attempt to reconstruct 12 years of mystery surrounding how a young woman could die and remain undiscovered in one of Manhattan's most prestigious hotels while automated systems continued to process payments and maintain the illusion of an ongoing legitimate occupancy. The initial examination of Suite 1247 revealed no obvious signs of violence or forced entry, though the advanced state of decomposition and the passage of time made immediate determination of cause of death impossible without extensive forensic analysis and investigation into Anita's background, health history, and the circumstances that had led her to isolate herself so completely from family, friends, and the outside world. The personal belongings found in the suite included expensive clothing, jewelry, electronic devices, and documents that would provide investigators with clues about Anita's identity and background, though the mystery of how she had maintained complete isolation for what appeared to be years while living in the heart of Manhattan raised questions about her mental state, her reasons for hiding, and whether her death had been natural, accidental, or the result of foul play. The hotel's security records and surveillance systems would prove crucial in the investigation as detectives attempted to determine when Anita had last been seen alive, whether anyone else had visited her suite, and how she had managed to survive in complete isolation for an extended period before her death, with particular attention to delivery records and any signs of outside assistance or contact with the broader world. The notification of Anita's family in Delhi, India, would reveal that she had been listed as a missing person for 12 years after sending her final cryptic email message, though her family's efforts to locate her through official channels had been hampered by her apparent use of false identification and her deliberate efforts to conceal her whereabouts and activities from anyone who might attempt to find her or interfere with her chosen isolation. Detective Michael Harris of the NYPD's Major Case Squad arrived at the Manhattan Plaza Hotel at 3:47 p.m. on March 16, 2024, to begin what would become one of the most complex and emotionally challenging investigations of his 23-year career, as the discovery of Anita Sharma's remains raised immediate questions about how a young woman could die undetected in a luxury hotel while automated systems continued to operate as if she were alive and well, paying her bills and maintaining her privacy through technological means that had concealed her death for over a decade. The initial crime scene examination revealed a suite that had been maintained in pristine condition despite 12 years of occupancy, with no evidence of disturbance, violence, or struggle that might suggest foul play, though the circumstances of Anita's isolation and death were so unusual that investigators could not immediately rule out homicide, suicide, or accidental death without extensive forensic analysis and background investigation into her mental state and personal history. The forensic team's preliminary examination of Anita's remains indicated that she had been lying on the bed when death occurred, with her body positioned naturally and her expensive clothing intact, suggesting peaceful death rather than violence or struggle, though the advanced state of decomposition made precise determination of time and cause of death dependent on detailed autopsy examination and toxicological analysis that would require weeks or months to complete. The hotel's financial records revealed that Suite 1247 had been paid for continuously through automated credit card charges connected to a bank account that had been established in Anita's name, using what appeared to be legitimate identification documents, though investigators suspected that she might have been using false or altered papers to establish her American identity and financial arrangements without detection by immigration or law enforcement authorities. The personal belongings found throughout the suite included designer clothing worth tens of thousands of euros, expensive jewelry and watches, electronic devices including laptops and phones that had been powered down for years, and handwritten journals and notebooks that would prove crucial in understanding Anita's mental state and the circumstances that had led to her complete isolation from family and society. Luis Ortega's testimony about the hotel's policies and procedures revealed that Suite 1247's occupant had specifically requested complete privacy with no housekeeping, room service, or maintenance visits, arrangements that were unusual but not unprecedented among wealthy clients who valued discretion above comfort and were willing to pay premium rates for absolute non-interference from hotel staff and management. The investigation into the hotel's security systems revealed gaps in surveillance coverage that had allowed Anita to enter and exit the building without being recorded on camera, though investigators suspected that she had rarely, if ever, left her suite during the final years of her life, relying on food delivery services and online shopping to meet her basic needs while avoiding any face-to-face contact with other people. Carla Mendez provided investigators with crucial information about the suite's unusual arrangements and her growing suspicions over the years about the guest who was never seen but whose room was consistently paid for, though hotel management had discouraged staff curiosity and inquiry about clients who preferred complete privacy and paid their bills on time without creating problems or complaints. The preliminary autopsy examination conducted by the New York City Medical Examiner's Office indicated that Anita had likely died of natural causes, possibly related to malnutrition or medical conditions that had not received proper treatment due to her isolation and refusal to seek medical care, though definitive determination of cause of death would require extensive toxicological analysis and investigation into her health history and access to medications. The discovery of prescription medication bottles in the suite raised questions about Anita's mental and physical health, including evidence of antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications that suggested she had been struggling with psychological issues that might have contributed to her decision to isolate herself completely from family and society, though investigators needed to determine whether these medications had been obtained legally through proper medical channels. The electronic devices found in Anita's suite would require forensic analysis to recover emails, internet browsing history, and other digital evidence that might explain her reasons for disappearing from her family's life and maintaining complete isolation in the hotel suite, with particular attention to any communications that might indicate whether she had been hiding from specific threats or individuals who might have wished her harm. The notification process for Anita's family in Delhi required coordination with international law enforcement and diplomatic authorities to verify her identity and inform her relatives about her death after 12 years of uncertainty about her fate and whereabouts, though investigators anticipated that family interviews would provide crucial background information about her mental state and the circumstances that had led to her disappearance from India. The forensic analysis of Anita Sharma's personal journals and notebooks, discovered throughout Suite 1247, revealed a detailed record of her psychological deterioration and growing paranoia during her years of isolation, including increasingly erratic handwriting and disturbing entries that documented her fears about being discovered, her regrets about abandoning her family, and her growing inability to leave the hotel room that had become both her sanctuary and her prison over the course of 12 years of voluntary exile from the world. The financial investigation conducted by Detective Harris uncovered a complex web of bank accounts and investment portfolios that had provided Anita with sufficient resources to maintain her hotel suite and basic living expenses for over a decade, though the source of her wealth remained mysterious and raised questions about whether she had been involved in illegal activities or had received assistance from unknown benefactors who had supported her isolation. The digital forensics examination of Anita's computers and smartphones revealed extensive research into identity fraud, immigration procedures, and methods for disappearing from official records, suggesting that her isolation had been carefully planned rather than spontaneous. Though her internet browsing history also showed increasing signs of mental instability and obsessive behavior that had characterized her final years of life. The international investigation that began with coordination between NYPD and Delhi police revealed that Anita had been reported missing by her family in 2012 after she failed to return from what she had described as a short business trip to explore fashion opportunities in Europe and America, though her final email to her family had been sent from a New York internet cafe and had contained the cryptic message that she was safe but should not be searched for or contacted. The medical examiner's detailed autopsy results indicated that Anita had died approximately 11 years earlier from complications related to severe malnutrition and dehydration, suggesting that she had been unable or unwilling to maintain adequate self-care during her final months of life, possibly due to mental illness, physical disability, or psychological breakdown that had prevented her from seeking help or maintaining basic survival behaviors. The toxicology reports revealed high levels of prescription psychiatric medications in Anita's remains, including antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications that had been prescribed under false names at multiple New York pharmacies, indicating that she had been struggling with serious mental health issues, while also using fraudulent identification to obtain medical care without being detected by authorities or her family who were searching for her. The hotel's delivery records, subpoenaed during the investigation, showed regular food deliveries from expensive Manhattan restaurants and grocery services that had been paid for through Anita's credit cards, though delivery personnel had been instructed to leave packages outside the suite door and had never seen or interacted directly with the occupant, who had maintained complete anonymity even in her commercial transactions. The investigation into Anita's background revealed that she had been a promising fashion designer in Delhi, with no apparent history of mental illness or criminal activity, though family members reported that she had become increasingly anxious and secretive during the months before her disappearance, mentioning vague fears about unspecified threats and expressing desire to start a new life in a different country where she could pursue her dreams without family pressure or cultural restrictions. The forensic accounting analysis revealed that Anita had liquidated substantial family assets and investment accounts shortly before her disappearance, transferring approximately €2 million to American banks through complex international transactions that had been designed to avoid detection by Indian authorities and her family members who might have been able to track her movements through financial records. The psychological evaluation conducted by forensic psychiatrists, based on Anita's journals and behavior patterns, suggested that she had been suffering from severe agoraphobia and paranoid delusions that had made it impossible for her to leave her hotel suite or maintain contact with the outside world, leading to progressive isolation and eventual death from self-neglect that had been concealed by automated systems and her elaborate privacy arrangements. The interview process with Anita's family members in Delhi revealed their devastation at learning of her death and their continued confusion about her reasons for disappearing, though they provided investigators with important background information about her personality changes and concerning behaviors during the months before her departure from India, including paranoid fears about being followed or watched by unknown individuals. The investigation into potential threats or enemies in Anita's past life found no evidence of criminal connections, abusive relationships, or business conflicts that might have justified her extreme measures to hide and disappear, though her family suggested that cultural pressure and expectations about marriage and career might have contributed to her decision to abandon her identity and start over in America, where she believed she could live independently without family interference or social judgment. The breakthrough in understanding Anita's motivations came when investigators discovered a hidden compartment in her hotel suite containing detailed records of online harassment and cyberstalking that she had experienced from unknown individuals who had threatened her safety and reputation in India, providing the first concrete evidence of external threats that might have justified her extreme decision to fake her disappearance and maintain complete isolation from family and society for over a decade. The cybersecurity analysis of Anita's digital devices revealed that she had been the target of sophisticated online harassment campaigns that included identity theft, reputation, sabotage, and specific threats of violence that had escalated during the months before her departure from India, though investigators were unable to determine whether these threats had been real or the product of her deteriorating mental health and paranoid delusions about persecution. The forensic examination of the hidden documents revealed that Anita had been collecting evidence of the harassment for months before her disappearance, including screenshots of threatening messages, records of fraudulent accounts created in her name, and documentation of attempts to sabotage her fashion business and personal relationships through false accusations and malicious rumors spread through social media and professional networks. The international cooperation between American and Indian law enforcement revealed that similar harassment campaigns had targeted other young professional women in Delhi's fashion and entertainment industries, suggesting that Anita might have been the victim of organized criminal activity or systematic misogynistic harassment that had driven her to take extreme measures to protect herself from continued persecution and potential physical violence. The analysis of Anita's final months in India showed a pattern of increasing isolation and paranoid behavior that included changing her residence multiple times, varying her daily routines to avoid being followed, and expressing fears to close friends about being watched and threatened by unknown individuals who seemed to know details about her private life and professional activities. The investigation into the source of the harassment revealed connections to a network of individuals involved in online exploitation and extortion, targeting successful women in India's creative industries, though many of the perpetrators had used sophisticated technology to conceal their identities and locations, making prosecution difficult even when their activities were detected by authorities. The psychological evaluation of Anita's mental state during her isolation years revealed that while she had initially been responding rationally to legitimate threats, her prolonged solitude and lack of social contact had exacerbated underlying anxiety disorders and created delusional thinking that had made it impossible for her to accurately assess risks or make rational decisions about seeking help, returning to normal life. The family interviews revealed that Anita had attempted to explain her fears to relatives who had dismissed her concerns as overreaction or attention-seeking behavior, creating additional trauma and isolation that had reinforced her belief that she could not rely on family support to address the threats she was experiencing, leading to her decision to handle the situation independently through disappearance and identity concealment. The forensic analysis of her hotel suite revealed elaborate security measures that Anita had implemented to protect herself from potential discovery, including multiple locks, surveillance detection equipment, and emergency supplies that suggested she had been living in constant fear of being found by the individuals who had been threatening her safety and reputation in India. The medical records obtained through court orders revealed that Anita had been seeking treatment for severe anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder from multiple New York psychiatrists using false identities, though her paranoid fears about being traced through medical records had prevented her from maintaining consistent treatment relationships that might have provided effective therapy for her psychological trauma and mental health deterioration. The investigation into her final years revealed that Anita had become increasingly unable to distinguish between real and imagined threats, leading to behavior patterns that included obsessive security measures, avoidance of all human contact, and progressive physical deterioration as she became too fearful to seek medical care or maintain adequate nutrition and self-care routines necessary for survival. The discovery of suicide notes written during different periods of her isolation suggested that Anita had repeatedly considered ending her life, but had been deterred by hope that she might eventually recover sufficiently to reunite with her family or find ways to address the threats that had driven her into hiding, though her deteriorating mental state had made such recovery increasingly unlikely as years passed without appropriate intervention or support. The comprehensive investigation into Anita's death reached its conclusion when forensic experts determined that she had died from complications related to severe malnutrition and dehydration that had resulted from her inability to care for herself during the final months of her life, when her paranoid delusions and agoraphobia had become so severe that she was unable to accept food deliveries or perform basic survival activities necessary to maintain her health and physical well-being. The psychological autopsy, conducted by forensic psychiatrists, revealed that Anita had been suffering from a complex combination of post-traumatic stress disorder, severe anxiety, and progressive paranoid psychosis that had developed during her years of isolation, creating a mental health crisis that would have required intensive professional intervention to address effectively, though her fear of discovery had prevented her from seeking the help that might have saved her life. The final report prepared by Detective Harris documented the tragic progression from legitimate fears about online harassment and threats to psychological breakdown and death by self-neglect, demonstrating how initial rational responses to real dangers had evolved into mental illness and behaviors that had ultimately proven fatal, despite Anita's obvious intelligence and initial ability to plan and execute her disappearance successfully. The closure notification sent to Anita's family in Delhi provided them with detailed explanation of the circumstances surrounding her death and the evidence that had been gathered about the threats and harassment that had motivated her disappearance, though the knowledge that she had died alone and afraid after years of unnecessary isolation created additional grief and trauma for relatives who had never stopped hoping for her safe return. The policy recommendations that emerged from the investigation included enhanced procedures for hotel staff to recognize signs of guest isolation and potential medical emergencies, improved coordination between law enforcement agencies investigating online harassment and threats against women, and better resources for individuals seeking to escape persecution while maintaining contact with mental health services and family support systems. The legal consequences for the individuals identified as perpetrators of the harassment campaign that had driven Anita to disappear were limited by jurisdictional issues and the difficulty of prosecuting cybercrime across international boundaries, though Indian authorities were able to file charges against some suspects and implement enhanced protections for women in creative industries who might be vulnerable to similar targeting and exploitation. The hotel industry's response to Anita's case included development of enhanced protocols for monitoring long-term guests who exhibited unusual isolation patterns or requested extreme privacy measures, while balancing guest privacy rights with safety concerns and the need to identify potential medical emergencies or criminal activities that might be concealed by excessive secrecy and non-contact arrangements. The victim advocacy work that emerged from Anita's case focused on supporting women who experienced online harassment and cyberstalking, providing resources for safe disappearance and identity protection when legitimate threats required extreme measures, while also ensuring access to mental health services and family support that could prevent the isolation and psychological deterioration that had contributed to her death. The international cooperation initiatives developed in response to this case improved coordination between law enforcement agencies investigating cross-border cybercrime and harassment, while also establishing protocols for assisting individuals who needed to disappear for safety reasons without completely severing connections to support systems and medical care that were essential for long-term survival and mental health. The memorial service held for Anita in Delhi was attended by hundreds of people, including family members, friends, and professional colleagues who remembered her as a talented and promising young woman whose life had been destroyed by harassment and the failure of social and legal systems to provide adequate protection and support for women facing online persecution and threats of violence. The educational initiatives developed in response to Anita's case included programs for young professionals about recognizing and responding to online harassment, accessing legal and psychological support when threatened, and maintaining safety while preserving connections to family and medical care that were essential for physical and mental health during crisis situations. The ongoing impact of Anita's case continues to influence discussions about online safety, mental health support for harassment victims, and the balance between privacy rights and safety concerns in situations where individuals need to protect themselves from legitimate threats while maintaining access to support systems and medical care that are necessary for long-term survival and recovery. The long-term investigation into the network of online harassment that had targeted Anita and other women in India's fashion industry revealed a sophisticated criminal enterprise that used cyberstalking, identity theft, and reputation sabotage to extort money from successful professional women, with Anita's case serving as a tragic example of how psychological warfare and systematic persecution could drive victims to take extreme measures that ultimately proved more dangerous than the original threats. The forensic analysis of the harassment evidence that Anita had collected provided law enforcement with crucial information for prosecuting other cases and identifying additional victims who had been targeted by the same criminal network, though many women had been too frightened or embarrassed to report the harassment, allowing the perpetrators to operate with impunity for years while causing devastating psychological damage to numerous victims. The psychological research conducted using Anita's extensive journals and medical records contributed to enhanced understanding of how prolonged isolation and fear could create progressive mental health deterioration that made it impossible for victims to make rational decisions about seeking help or maintaining basic survival behaviors, providing valuable insights for developing better support services and intervention strategies for future cases. The policy changes implemented by Indian law enforcement included enhanced procedures for investigating online harassment and cyberstalking, improved victim protection services, and better coordination with international authorities when crimes crossed national boundaries, though advocates noted that cultural attitudes toward women's independence and professional success continued to create vulnerability to harassment and limited reporting of threats and persecution. The hotel industry's adoption of enhanced monitoring procedures for long-term guests was balanced with respect for privacy rights and legitimate needs for discretion, though staff training programs now included recognition of warning signs that might indicate medical emergencies, mental health crises, or potential criminal activity that required intervention, despite guest preferences for non-contact arrangements. The victim support services that were established in Anita's memory provided specialized assistance for women experiencing online harassment and cyberstalking, including safe house services, legal advocacy, and psychological counseling that addressed both the immediate threats and the long-term trauma that could result from systematic persecution and social isolation necessary for protection from dangerous individuals. The international cooperation frameworks developed for investigating cybercrime and harassment provided templates for future cases involving cross-border criminal activity and victim protection, ensuring that individuals who needed to disappear for safety reasons could access support services and maintain connections to family and medical care, while still protecting themselves from continued persecution and threats. The academic research programs funded through memorial foundations established in Anita's honor continued to study the intersection of online harassment, mental health, and victim safety, contributing to enhanced understanding of how technology could be used both to facilitate criminal activity and to provide protection and support services for individuals who were vulnerable to persecution and exploitation. The media coverage of Anita's case brought international attention to the serious consequences of online harassment and the need for better legal and social protections for women who faced systematic persecution, while also highlighting the importance of maintaining support connections and access to mental health services, even when extreme privacy measures were necessary for physical safety. The legal precedents established through the prosecution of individuals connected to Anita's harassment case influenced how similar crimes would be investigated and prosecuted in the future, particularly regarding the treatment of psychological harm and the long-term consequences of systematic online persecution that could lead to severe mental illness and self-destructive behaviors among victims. The community healing initiatives developed in response to Anita's tragedy included educational programs about online safety, mental health awareness, and the importance of maintaining social connections and support systems even during crisis situations, when isolation might seem like the safest option for protecting oneself from threats and persecution. The ongoing monitoring and evaluation of intervention strategies developed in response to Anita's case provided valuable data about the effectiveness of different approaches to supporting harassment victims while preventing the complete social isolation and mental health deterioration that had contributed to her death after years of unnecessary suffering and psychological trauma. The comprehensive review of Anita's case 5 years after the discovery of her remains revealed the lasting impact of her tragedy on multiple systems and communities, including enhanced law enforcement procedures for investigating online harassment, improved victim support services, and better recognition of the serious psychological consequences that could result from systematic persecution and the extreme isolation measures that victims might adopt to protect themselves from continued threats and violence. The Memorial Scholarship Program, established by Anita's family, provided financial support for young women pursuing careers in creative industries, while also funding research into online safety and victim protection services that could prevent similar tragedies by ensuring that harassment victims had access to professional support and alternative safety strategies that did not require complete severance from family and social connections essential for mental health and survival. The hotel industry's continued evolution of guest monitoring and safety procedures reflected ongoing efforts to balance privacy rights with the responsibility to recognize and respond to potential medical emergencies or crisis situations that might be concealed by guests' preferences for extreme privacy and non-contact arrangements, with particular attention to long-term occupancy patterns that might indicate social isolation or psychological distress. The international law enforcement cooperation that had been developed for investigating Anita's case continued to facilitate successful prosecution of online harassment and cyberstalking cases that crossed national boundaries, providing victims with enhanced protection and ensuring that perpetrators faced appropriate legal consequences for crimes that had previously been difficult to prosecute due to jurisdictional limitations and technological challenges. The psychological treatment innovations that emerged from studying Anita's mental health deterioration contributed to enhanced therapeutic approaches for treating victims of online harassment and systematic persecution, with particular attention to maintaining reality testing and social connections that could prevent the progressive paranoid thinking and isolation behaviors that had proved fatal in her case. The victim advocacy programs that continued to operate in Anita's memory provided specialized services for women experiencing online harassment, including safety planning that emphasized maintaining support connections while implementing necessary protective measures, ensuring that victims could protect themselves from real threats without completely severing the social and professional relationships that were essential for long-term well-being and recovery. The technology industry's response to Anita's case included enhanced reporting and investigation procedures for online harassment, improved victim protection features on social media platforms, and better coordination with law enforcement agencies investigating cyberstalking and identity theft that could escalate to serious threats requiring victim protection services and potential prosecution of perpetrators. The cultural impact of Anita's story in India included increased awareness about the serious consequences of online harassment and the need for social and legal protections for women pursuing professional careers in industries where success might attract unwanted attention and systematic persecution from individuals opposed to women's independence and achievement. The ongoing research initiatives that continued to study Anita's case provided valuable insights into the psychology of extreme isolation and its effects on decision-making capabilities, reality testing, and survival behaviors, contributing to enhanced understanding of how trauma and fear could create behaviors that were more dangerous than the original threats that motivated them. The educational programs developed for online safety and harassment prevention reached thousands of individuals through community workshops, professional training, and digital resources that provided practical information about recognizing threats, accessing support services, and maintaining safety while preserving the social and professional connections that were essential for success and psychological well-being. The policy advocacy work that emerged from Anita's case continued to influence legislation and law enforcement procedures regarding online harassment and cyberstalking, while also supporting improved victim services and international cooperation frameworks that could provide better protection for individuals facing cross-border criminal persecution and systematic harassment campaigns. The healing and remembrance activities organized by Anita's family and supporters provided ongoing opportunities to honor her memory, while also raising awareness about the serious consequences of online harassment and the importance of supporting victims who might be struggling with isolation and fear that could lead to dangerous self-protection behaviors without appropriate intervention and support. The 10-year commemoration of Anita's discovery marked a significant milestone in ongoing efforts to address the systemic issues that had contributed to her tragedy, with continued progress in law enforcement capabilities for investigating online harassment, enhanced victim support services, and improved recognition of the complex psychological factors that could drive harassment victims to adopt extreme isolation measures that proved more dangerous than the original threats they feared. The academic research programs that had been established to study Anita's case continued to produce valuable insights into the relationship between online harassment, mental health deterioration, and victim safety strategies, contributing to enhanced understanding of how systematic persecution could create psychological trauma that interfered with rational decision-making and self-protection behaviors among individuals who were otherwise intelligent and capable. The International Conference on Cyberstalking and Victim Protection that was organized annually in Anita's memory brought together researchers, law enforcement officials, victim advocates, and technology industry representatives to share knowledge and develop more effective approaches to preventing online harassment and supporting victims who faced serious threats to their safety and well-being. The technology innovations that had been developed in response to Anita's case included enhanced privacy protection tools, improved reporting mechanisms for online harassment, and better coordination between social media platforms and law enforcement agencies, investigating cyberstalking and identity theft that could escalate to serious threats requiring victim protection services and criminal prosecution. The Victim Support Network that operated under Anita's name provided comprehensive services, including safe housing, legal advocacy, psychological counseling, and safety planning that emphasized maintaining social and professional connections while implementing necessary protective measures, ensuring that harassment victims could protect themselves without the complete isolation that had proved fatal in Anita's case. The law enforcement training programs that incorporated lessons from Anita's investigation provided officers with enhanced skills for recognizing and investigating online harassment cases, understanding the psychological impact of systematic persecution, and coordinating with victim services to ensure that individuals facing serious threats received appropriate protection and support, rather than being driven to dangerous self-isolation behaviors. The hotel industry standards that had been developed in response to Anita's case continued to evolve, balancing guest privacy rights with safety responsibilities through enhanced staff training, improved monitoring procedures for long-term guests who exhibited isolation patterns, and better coordination with medical and social services when concerns arose about potential health emergencies or crisis situations. The cultural change initiatives that had been inspired by Anita's story continued to address social attitudes toward women's professional success and independence, challenging cultural norms that might make women more vulnerable to harassment, while also promoting acceptance of the support services and protection strategies that could help victims maintain their safety without sacrificing their careers or social connections. The Memorial Foundation, established by Anita's family, continued to fund research, victim services, and educational programs that addressed online harassment and its consequences, while also supporting young women pursuing careers in creative industries where success might attract unwanted attention and systematic persecution, requiring professional intervention and protection services. The ongoing evaluation of prevention and intervention strategies developed in response to Anita's case provided valuable data about the effectiveness of different approaches to supporting harassment victims and preventing the extreme isolation behaviors that had contributed to her death, informing continued improvements in victim services and law enforcement procedures. The international cooperation frameworks that had been developed for investigating cross-border cybercrime continued to facilitate successful prosecution of harassment cases, while also providing victims with enhanced protection, options that maintain their access to support services and family connections, essential for long-term safety and psychological well-being. The legacy projects that continued to operate in Anita's memory included scholarship programs, research initiatives, victim support services, and educational campaigns that addressed the serious consequences of online harassment, while also promoting awareness of the resources and strategies available to help victims protect themselves without resorting to the dangerous isolation that had characterized her final years. The comprehensive impact assessment, conducted 15 years after Anita's death, revealed the far-reaching influence of her case on multiple sectors and communities, with measurable improvements in law enforcement capabilities, victim support services, technology industry practices, and social awareness about the serious consequences of online harassment and the complex factors that could drive victims to adopt extreme protection measures that proved more dangerous than the original threats. The research findings that continued to emerge from analysis of Anita's extensive personal records provided ongoing insights into the psychology of extreme isolation and its effects on mental health, decision-making capabilities, and survival behaviors, contributing to enhanced therapeutic approaches and intervention strategies that could help other victims avoid similar tragic outcomes while still protecting themselves from legitimate threats and persecution. The victim advocacy movement that had grown from Anita's case achieved significant policy victories, including enhanced legal protections for harassment victims, improved international cooperation for investigating cybercrime, and better funding for support services that provided alternatives to the dangerous isolation that had characterized traditional approaches to victim protection and safety planning. The technology industry's continued evolution in response to Anita's case included sophisticated harassment detection algorithms, enhanced victim protection features, and improved coordination with law enforcement and victim services, though advocates noted that technological solutions needed to be combined with social and legal changes to address the underlying attitudes and behaviors that created vulnerability to harassment and persecution. The educational impact of Anita's story reached millions of individuals through documentary films, academic curricula, and public awareness campaigns that highlighted the serious consequences of online harassment, while also providing practical information about recognizing threats, accessing support services, and maintaining safety without resorting to complete social isolation that could prove more dangerous than the original risks. The international cooperation initiatives that had been developed for investigating cases like Anita's continued to evolve and improve, providing templates for law enforcement agencies dealing with cross-border cybercrime, while also ensuring that victims could access protection and support services regardless of their location or the international scope of the threats they faced. The mental health profession's response to Anita's case included enhanced training for therapists, treating harassment victims, improved diagnostic criteria for trauma related to systematic persecution, and better therapeutic approaches that addressed both the immediate safety concerns and the long-term psychological consequences of living under threat while maintaining social connections essential for recovery and well-being. The hotel and hospitality industry's adoption of enhanced safety procedures provided better protection for guests who might be experiencing crisis situations while respecting legitimate privacy needs and preferences for discretion, demonstrating that commercial enterprises could balance profitability with social responsibility and customer safety through appropriate training and procedural improvements. The cultural transformation that had been influenced by Anita's story included increased recognition of women's right to professional success without facing harassment or persecution, better understanding of the serious psychological consequences of systematic targeting and intimidation, and enhanced social support for individuals who needed to take protective measures while maintaining their careers and personal relationships. The ongoing research and evaluation activities that continued to analyze Anita's case and similar situations provided valuable data for improving prevention strategies, intervention procedures, and support services that could help future victims navigate threats and harassment without resorting to the extreme isolation and self-protection behaviors that had proved fatal despite her intelligence and initial success in escaping the immediate dangers that had motivated her disappearance from India. The community memorials and awareness events that were organized annually in Anita's honor provided opportunities for continued education about online harassment and victim safety, while also serving as platforms for sharing resources and supporting individuals who might be experiencing similar threats or considering dangerous isolation as a protection strategy without understanding the long-term risks to their physical and mental health. The policy advocacy achievements that had been inspired by Anita's case continued to influence legislation and law enforcement procedures at national and international levels, creating enhanced legal protections for harassment victims, while also establishing better coordination mechanisms between agencies and organizations responsible for victim safety and support services across jurisdictional boundaries. 24 years after Anita Sharma first arrived in New York with dreams of fashion success, and 12 years after hotel staff discovered her skeletal remains in Suite 1247 of the Manhattan Plaza Hotel, her tragic story continues to serve as a powerful reminder of how online harassment and systematic persecution can drive even the most intelligent and resourceful individuals to adopt extreme protection measures that ultimately prove more dangerous than the original threats they were designed to escape. The transformation of understanding about online harassment and victim protection that has occurred since Anita's case demonstrates both the progress that has been made in supporting vulnerable individuals and the ongoing challenges that remain in preventing similar tragedies through early intervention and comprehensive support services that address both immediate safety concerns and long-term mental health needs. The law enforcement capabilities that have been enhanced through lessons learned from investigating Anita's death continue to provide better protection for harassment victims, while also enabling more effective prosecution of perpetrators who use technology to systematically persecute and intimidate individuals, particularly women who achieve professional success in industries where their independence and achievements might attract unwanted attention. The victim support services that were developed in response to Anita's case have assisted thousands of individuals facing online harassment and threats, providing them with safety strategies that maintain their social and professional connections, while protecting them from real dangers, ensuring that victims can survive and recover without resorting to the complete isolation that had proved fatal in her situation. The technology industry's continued evolution in addressing online harassment reflects ongoing recognition that digital platforms have responsibilities to protect users from systematic persecution, while also providing law enforcement and victim services with tools and information necessary for investigating crimes and supporting individuals who face serious threats to their safety and well-being. The international cooperation frameworks that were established for investigating cross-border cybercrime continue to facilitate successful prosecution of harassment cases, while also providing victims with enhanced protection options that respect their need for safety without requiring them to abandon the family relationships and social connections that are essential for long-term survival and recovery. The psychological research that has emerged from detailed study of Anita's mental health deterioration during her years of isolation continues to inform therapeutic approaches and intervention strategies that help harassment victims maintain their ability to make rational decisions about safety and support while protecting themselves from legitimate threats and persecution. The educational impact of Anita's story extends far beyond the immediate communities affected by her case to include enhanced public awareness about the serious consequences of online harassment and the importance of supporting victims who might be struggling with isolation and fear that could lead to dangerous self-protection behaviors without appropriate professional intervention. The cultural changes that have been influenced by Anita's tragedy include increased recognition of women's rights to professional success without facing systematic harassment, better understanding of the complex psychological factors involved in victim responses to threats, and enhanced social support for individuals who need protection while maintaining their careers and personal relationships. The Memorial Foundation that continues to operate in Anita's honor provides ongoing support for research, victim services, and educational programs that address online harassment and its consequences, while also funding scholarship opportunities for young women pursuing careers in creative industries where they might face similar challenges and threats. The policy achievements that have resulted from advocacy work inspired by Anita's case include enhanced legal protections for harassment victims, improved international cooperation for investigating cybercrime, and better funding for support services that provide alternatives to the dangerous isolation that had characterized traditional approaches to victim protection. The legacy of Anita Sharma lives on through the countless individuals who have been protected by enhanced harassment prevention programs, the victims who have received support through services developed in her memory, and the broader understanding of how online persecution can escalate to life-threatening situations requiring comprehensive intervention and support that maintains both safety and social connections, essential for survival and recovery. Her story serves as a permanent reminder that while technology can be used to facilitate harassment and persecution, it can also provide tools for protection and support when combined with appropriate legal frameworks, victim services, and social awareness that recognizes the serious consequences of systematic targeting and intimidation in our interconnected digital world. The prevention programs and support services that continue to evolve based on lessons learned from Anita's case ensure that her death, while tragic and unnecessary, has contributed to protecting other vulnerable individuals from similar fates, while advancing our collective understanding of how to address online harassment and support victims without requiring them to sacrifice their lives, careers, or fundamental human connections in pursuit of safety and peace.